Day 343 of the Ukrainian War Map, also known as the Russo-Ukrainian War. Juzzy here, and today is another update as I take a simplified and down-to-earth approach to some of the most important happenings on the ground in Ukraine today. And we'll start off with taking a look at those Russian military losses, which are currently sitting on 128,420 Russian military personnel losses, which represents an addition of 920 in the past 24 hours alone. And this is not even including the wounded in action. Then when looking at the Russian hardware losses, 8 tanks, 4 APVs and 10 artillery. So I would say that's an average to above average day for the hardware losses as well. Then we'll move back to the map and we'll start out again in Russia, as we typically do. And let's see, so where Putin ordered to search vehicles and weapons and explosives in regions with a yellow threat, as it's called, which includes the Belgorod, Kursk, and Bryansk oblasts. And so this was a decree direct from Putin himself as a response to the actual homegrown threats he's largely experiencing within Russia. That and his paranoia. He also changed the yellow threat level from a maximum of 15 days to unlimited. Much in the same way he set his presidential term limits, unlimited as well. Dodgy, dodgy. Then we'll head over to Ukraine in the Donbass and we'll start out in Soledar today. So the Russian troops tried to expand territorial gains just north of Soledar, particularly as Russian forces tried to close the gap at Mikhailivka. So I need to zoom in, so it's a really tiny settlement right there. But no such luck in the past couple of days. Of course, it's no secret now that the Wagner forces, or Wagner, burned through their infantry to make those previous gains here. Which is why, when we take a look just a bit south at Krasnohora, which still has the basin-style contact point or front line that Russia has been unable to capture the settlement of so far. But they have been putting some pressure on still. Then just south of here, so the other major ground, so Bakhmut. So Ukrainian forces overnight repelled assaults in the area, but right now Russia continues its heavy fighting in a northward direction to Ivanivska. So there it is, that town there, as it's quite the supply route for Bakhmut, something of course they're very much looking to hold on to. And you'll notice that the Russian forces are really extending their front lines out very far, looking to do an encirclement, but quite a massive encirclement. The only downside here for the Russian forces is it does tend to stretch their resources and manpower quite thin, making their front line literally 2 to 3 times longer than it actually otherwise would be. And then moving down, also just next door, just south of Bakhmut, there was the Ukrainian artillery hit and destroyed a Russian command base in Kurtimivka. So right here. And then just in the south of the Donbass, Volodar. So let's zoom out and zoom in to find that one. So bit of a common theme here, but Russian forces launched fresh attacks in a more concerted effort to gain land in the town, but still unsuccessful. And it's places like this, so Volodar and Marinka right next door, but also Bakhmut and Soledar, where Russia have been pouring so much of their resources into, quite wastefully, might I add. Think of it like ill-equipped and ill-trained frontal attacks that are just such an unfortunate use of Russian resources. Then we'll move across on the map and we'll take a look at Nikopol. So the Russian army shelled the Nikopol district overnight. Nikopol is no stranger to this sort of treatment, and the Russian artillery fire, of course, has to come from across the river. The river looks quite big, but it's only about 3 miles wide at its shortest point. In fact, if I pop up the ruler, maybe not exactly on the point, 4.86 kilometers, almost exactly 3 miles wide. But realistically, the Russian forces are shooting from SPGs, other artillery, from a bit further back there. And if we take a quick peek at the pathogen map again, we'll see where the concentration of forces is. So it's making me zoom out and zoom in again. And here we go. So a bit of a rough guide as to the accumulation points of the Russian forces, which means they could indeed be firing from the Zaporizhia nuclear power plant that they're occupying, as that's probably the biggest concentration on the front there. Then we'll move next door to the wider, lost my place, there we go, to the wider Zaporizhia front lines, which has actually considerably cooled off from the last week. From what was likely Russia's attempt to pull Ukrainian forces from the Eastern Front, that is to say from the Donbass front lines. And yeah, there's still a few skirmishes here and there, but zero notable Russian offensives right now on this entire front line. Then we'll move across to some news for the day. So, bit of a tank update where a tally of, or really a total of, about 140 Western tanks will be delivered from 12 countries, Western countries, to Ukraine. And many of these Soviet-busting modern NATO tanks will be sent by the end of March. So 60 days. So 60 days to get training and infrastructure all sorted out, to allow them to be utilized to their full advantage. Oh, but also add to that, there is also well over 100 Soviet-era tanks that will be sent much sooner from Western partners to the Ukrainian front lines as well. So we're not waiting the full 60 days for some extra tanks. Then in some other news, the US is preparing a new military package that they'll announce in the upcoming days. But what makes this one so special is that they've hinted at providing longer range rocket artillery munitions. Now, some analysts say it would be the ATACMS that's being hinted at, the ones with the whopping 300 kilometer range or about 190 miles. But not a chance, not right now at least anyway. But I'm still excited because it could be the 150 kilometer range, which is about 95 miles range Boeing Saab GLSDB rocket artillery that they're referring to instead there, which has a range of about 2/3 more than the existing HIMARS GLMRS munitions. Which means to receive these would certainly mean a change in the calculus of war, further in the balance of the AFU. And with a map to show you the difference as well. So as you can see, it extends quite a bit further beyond the existing HIMARS range. And here's the thing, so even with Russia just being aware that the AFU has these bad boys at their disposal, it will force many Russian military key components to push further back, just as they did when HIMARS came to town. And I'll give you some examples. So we're talking Russian ammunition dumps, logistical points, command headquarters, and other various military hubs too. Now, these expected guided munitions that I'm hoping for, fingers crossed, although slower, as they tend to glide until they drop down and hit their destination, are smaller with a less of a radar cross-section. It's still said to be actually even more difficult for the Russian air defenses to hit than, say, a HIMARS munition there. But most importantly, these ones don't follow a standard HIMARS ballistic trajectory. In other words, they're capable of maneuverability, as you can see with the wings there. So just prior to hitting their target, giving them an additional evasive capability that the previously mentioned HIMARS munitions do not have. Now, either way, Ukraine will definitely receive these bad boys. I just hope it's part of this upcoming military aid package. Then we'll move across to some perhaps lighter side of news. So here we have some Leopards are free cakes in a Kyiv bakery to celebrate the upcoming arrival of the Leopard tanks to Ukraine. And it was just a few months ago that the same bakery had tank trap treats for sale as well. Say that 3 times fast. And as the name would suggest, actual tank traps slow down or stop tanks. Then in a bit of a quick funny to round it off, so the Moscow 24 news network. So here we have a Russian propagandist boasting about how Chinese smartphones are better than American iPhones, for instance, there. So as a result, then his co-host immediately asks him, "Oh, which phone do you have there?" And then he, embarrassed, backpedals and coughs because he has an iPhone. And he responds, "Oh, it doesn't matter because he has a Russian floral pattern as his iPhone lock screen," which balances out the equation for hating American tech. Cognitive dissonance, which is characterized by having the mental conflict you have when your beliefs don't line up with your actions, or what we sometimes call on this channel Russian logic. So thanks for watching, guys. Please leave a comment, subscribe, hit that like button, and I do hope to see all of you guys there in the next one. Cheers.